knowing that there is only one breath, one mind, one heart, that is the inhalation and the exhalation of the universe. It is the power back behind all things, the source of all that is good. I call it God, Allah, Buddha mind, Brahman, Vishnu, Vakantaka. Whatever name you want to give it, it is this divine presence. That which shows up as love and light and life. And I know that this divine presence is in, through, and as all things and everything that I come across in my day. It is in the furrowed bark of the madrone tree, the outstretched wings of the blue heron as it divides the sky, and in the promise of a magnolia bud. And I am of it. I am an expression of this divine manuscript. I am one with that loving presence, one with the good of the universe. I am this drop in the ocean that contains all the qualities of the ocean. This is my truth. This is the truth for everyone here as well. That each one is this representation of the divine in their physical form. There's nothing that they need to do to seek the divine outside of their embodiment. It is always here in this infinite now moment. So it is from this place in consciousness that I speak my word for this community, knowing that everything that takes place in this service, the words, the music, the breath, the silence, all of it comes from a place of inspiration. I know that the words spoken today come from a place of deep listening, shaped by clarity, attuned to what is real, and offering insight that lands where it is ready to take root. And I know that the music today moves like the weather through the inner landscape, shifting, softening, opening up those spaces that language cannot access, allowing that which is older than thought to be felt and known. And I know that the silence today isn't an absence, but it's a rich understory where meaning gathers, where awareness recognizes itself, and where that capital T truth becomes undeniable. And so I'm grateful for this. I'm grateful for this community. I'm grateful for this sanctuary. I'm grateful for the law that takes everything that is given to it and brings it into form with beauty and with precision. And so I give over this word into that law, knowing that it is done, knowing that it is complete, knowing that it is so, and I say, and so it is. And please join me in 2 minutes of silence.
So the third, we've been looking at, the what it is, the thing itself, which is love and law. It operates as love. It operates as law. The law of creativity, the law of what I put into it is what comes out of it. Yes. Okay. And then last week we looked at how it works, because it's good to know how it works, right? It doesn't work the way that I want it to. It works the way that it does, and so I better figure that out. Yes. We kind of compare it to the law of electricity. If you're wiring a house, you should know how the law of electricity works, because if you just want it to work the way that you want it to work, it might not. And that can have some shocking results. So today we're going to look at what it does. And the it being this infinite presence, this infinite beingness, okay? And so we start with a quote from Ernest Holmes who says, "While it is true that we are immersed in an infinite intelligence, a mind, capital M mind, that knows all things, it is also true that this intelligence can acquaint us with its ideas only as we are able and willing to receive them." We're inside of this. Everything is here. how much can I let in? How much can I let in? So the infinite oneness must have an outlet to express itself. If the infinite didn't need to express itself, no form would exist, like the entire universe, right? Galaxies and galaxies, they wouldn't be here. You and I wouldn't be here if it doesn't need some way of expressing itself. Okay? So the infinite oneness must have an outlet to express itself. In yesterday's reading from 365 Days of Richer Living, it started off with, I love the juxtaposition of this. The first one is the kind of thing we're familiar with. In God, I live, move, and have my being. The other part is, in me, God lives, moves, and has expression. You and I are carriers and expressors of the divine. That's wonderful, by the way. Okay? Feel that. So we are surrounded by and immersed in this infinite mind, this infinite intelligence that knows everything, in which the abstract essence, the ideal of love, beauty, truth, peace, wisdom exists. The ideal of it, the potential of it. And we also exist within this mind, yes? And we may draw from it, but we draw from it, what we draw from it, we must draw through the channel of our own minds. We must draw it through us if I'm going to experience it in my life. Otherwise, it just hangs out there as a potential. The potential of chocolate. As opposed to the drawing in through my own mind and mouth, the experience of chocolate. Yes? Okay? Yes? That's okay. Which is why we continually work on expanding our own consciousness, our own ideas of how much good we can draw to expand. We're working on expanding our channel through which this good may flow. You know, Buffy, if she was here, has a little phrase that says, "Can we get our foot off the hose?" Ralph Waldo Emerson said, "Can we get our bloated nothingness out of the way of the flow of the divine circuits?" Our bloated nothingness is all the ideas of how small we must keep it, right? So we're working on opening up how much more of this good can I let flow through and as me, to expand it. When we do this, not by demanding or talking to God, "Hey, you, come down here and do what I want." Not that. That's not it, right? But we do it by establishing a realization of unity. I recognize I am one of this infinite presence. Okay? And we do it by establishing a conscious connection with this infinite oneness. See, we're always connected with it. But most people, most of the time, are unconscious of our connection. Would that be fair to say? Mm-hmm. Okay. So we do it by establishing a conscious connection and the realization that we are one of that. It gives us only what we can accept and receive. We've all had that experience in a small micro way. I walk up and I tell somebody that, give them a compliment, and they say, "Oh, this old thing," or "Oh," they deflect it, yes? Okay, none of you do that, but you've seen other people do that, right? Okay? They can't receive it. They can't accept it. Oftentimes we can be the same way. Here's this infinite good that wants to express through us, and we say, "I don't deserve it. I'm not really good enough. I shouldn't really want that." And the infinite says, okay. So it gives us only what we can accept and receive. It can tell us only what we can understand. Its wisdom becomes our wisdom only in such degree as we embody its intelligence. Yes? Ernest references a saying that goes, "We can only know God insofar as we can become God." Only insofar as we can recognize our oneness with the infinite. And he says, by the way, don't take that too literally. Take it figuratively, because we can't become all of God, right? So we're here to embody it. Ernest says we have to know God insofar as we can become aware of our oneness with the divine. We can embody the divine nature of God, all of it. The infinite personalizes itself through us, right? the metaphor I want to use for this is in quantum physics, they talk about photons, right? And a photon is a packet of light, right? Now, is that packet of light all light? Does it have all the characteristics of light within that packet? Yes. Okay? So you and I are not all of God, but we have all of the nature of God within our little packet of who we are. That's what he's saying here. So to notice that, to be aware of that, we are, in quantum physics, they talk about localized and non-localized. We are localized expressions of the divine. We're doing it right here. Yes? Nudge your neighbor. Say, you are a localized expression of the divine. Yes. I know that because you're in this location. Right? So the infinite personalizes itself through us to whatever degree we can say yes. And this is why we talk about embodying this nature of the divine. Many people have an intellectual understanding of these ideas and these principles, and these are great ideas and such, but it isn't until we embody them, until we wrestle with them, like Jacob with the angel in the Old Testament, and demand their blessing and let them become us, that they become real to us. And until then, they are just shadows of ideas, just concepts, and we never receive their blessing. Yes? I can know all about chocolate, but until I embody chocolate, I haven't had the real experience of it. This infinite oneness is impersonal. It gives alike to all. When I say impersonal, it's not that it's an unfeeling, uncaring sort of thing. It's just that, like the law of electricity, it works the same way for everybody, yes? It doesn't sit there and go say, how rich are you? I'll work one way for you. How poor are you? I'll work a different way for you. It works the same for all. It gives alike to all. It values every one of its expressions alike. And it doesn't hold grudges. The law doesn't care what about our past. Right? As we have struggled to learn these principles, the minute the light goes on and we open to the flow of the divine nature, it flows. God doesn't have to forgive us for anything because God doesn't see anything wrong with us, which is itself. Yes? So a lot of us carry stories of, oh, I shouldn't have done this in my past. Maybe that's true. That, you have greater wisdom now than you did back then. How many of us have greater wisdom now than we did when we were, say, in our 20s or our teens, okay? Right. Okay, good. I was worried about Tim there. Okay. We have just had learning experiences along the way, and like a child who learns how to ride a bike, learning how to ride a bike, crashes for a while. How many of us, at least crashed once or twice while we were learning to ride a bike, okay? Until suddenly they understand the principles of balance and motion, and then they can easily ride forever. Now, I can sit down with a child and I can talk to them about the principles of balance and the principles of motion and the dynamics of it all, but until they get on the bike and have the experience, which is embodying, it's just a bunch of concepts. One of the reasons I invite us to sometimes stand up and get into the music and stuff like that is to get into the body. Embody. So we sing our love, and we dance our peace, and we live this good in form, because otherwise it's just a bunch of wonderful ideas that never land. We are constantly working with an impersonal principle, and as we understand the two characteristics of the one nature, which is love and law, the Taoists call it yin and yang, and realize that love points the way and law makes the way possible, which is to say that love chooses where it wants to go, and law is the process that makes that possible. The law is the servant of the Spirit. See, it doesn't have an agenda. It's the conscious choosing that activates the law. We can't use the law to get to love, right? because that implies that we're separate from love. I can't use the law to get to somewhere because the law will simply say, oh, you believe you're separate from that? Okay. You can have that experience. And then it will be like the bird that is still banging against my window weeks later, still thinking it's attacking some other bird or going to a tree that's not there. We just over and over and over again in our lives keep trying to get to something that we're already in. We're in love, yes? We're in wealth. We're in health. We're in joy. We just haven't made ourselves aware of it yet. Breathe. Nice deep breath. When we realize that we are love, immersed in love, in other words, we are the nature of God already, then we can command the law to express love in the most perfect way. And we have a greater experience of love, or whatever other God quality we choose. And this is why the first two steps of spiritual mind treatment, are to first realize and remember the nature of the divine. That's step one. God is. What is this infinite presence? That's what it is, remembering that. And then the second step is remembering that we are already one of that. I'm not separate from that. Now, sometimes if you're like me, when you get stuck in life's problems right here, you forget all that stuff, right? And that's why it's good to take a step back and say, wait a minute, time out, prayer. God is the only thing that's going on here, and I'm one of that. And now I can reapproach that with a different consciousness, from a different mindset, and create something new from that. Because from that awareness of our unity and our connection with all that is, we point the way, and the law makes it so. But we point the way from that infinite presence within us, not from our ego that's caught up in the stuff. Yes? Okay. So mental work, in other words, affirmative prayer, spiritual mind treatment, is definite. Each thought taps the same principle. When I say definite, it's to create a result. It's not just to sit there and vegetate and meditate. That's a wonderful place to be, to open up. But when we're using spiritual mind treatment, we want to have a definite purpose in mind with that. Yes? We want it for a reason, whatever that reason may be. We talk about one of the kind of jokes among religious scientists is there's a level at which people first come into this and they get involved in what are called the 3 Ps, manifesting palaces, princes, and parking spaces, right? Okay? But there's more beyond that. I was trying to find the quote last night, but I couldn't quite find it. But Ernest Holmes has a saying that says, it's good to manifest a nickel if you need that. It's good to manifest a healing from a pain if you need that. But beyond that, there is something far greater that we are playing with, that we are working with. When we understand the power and the potential of what we're playing with and how great it is and how great we can express it, we can start to shift the world. So each thought that we do taps the same principle, uses the same law, is inspired by the same spirit just as much as I can plant, anything in soil and it will grow it. It doesn't say, oh, I don't like daffodils, I'm not going to grow daffodils. But tulips, you can plant tulips over here. It doesn't say that. It just says, yes, I will grow this. To spirit, all things are possible. All things are possible. You've heard that phrase before, right? With God, all things are possible. Yes. The thing we have to remember is, to us, as much is possible as we can conceive and believe. To God, all things are possible. How much can I let through? How much can I actually conceive and believe? Ernest says, life always becomes to us the thing we need, and then in italics, when we believe that it becomes to us that particular thing. It's not a wishing and hoping, right? A lot of times we just kind of, I hope this works. But we're doing definite spiritual work. We're doing definite mental work. This is the embodiment. When we feel and know that this thing and I are already one, it manifests. Most of us cramp the flow of the divine through thought, things such as old, inaccurate beliefs. Anybody relate? Who am I to be happy, fabulous, and joyous? You can do the whole Marianne Williamson quote in there. We cramp it through blame, shame, or guilt about things of the past or fear of the future. But the law operates when? Now. The law operates in the now. It doesn't care about our past. It doesn't care about our future, other than if we have fears about our future, then it will generate those fears for us because we're telling it to. Breathe. Oh, shit. It works in the present. It works in the now. It doesn't care about our past. Only we make up the story. So as we do a treatment, we make it active and definite. Otherwise, we're like an artist who sits there and wants to paint a picture and just sits there with their paints and their brushes and does nothing. Got all the tools, don't use them. So if we're to create a definite form of good, we must conceive, then believe it. And this is faith, which is the removal of doubt. By the way, that's one of the processes we go through. I talked about the manifesting palaces, principles, and parking space. We have to learn that we can do that first before we can take the leap into something bigger, yes? We're like any other, a child learning, anybody learning anything. We got to know the basics of it. We need to learn how to do addition before we can do calculus, yes? When I was an art major in my first year in college, I was never taught how to draw. I couldn't do a representational painting to save my life. So I was an abstract artist. And I was good at being an abstract artist for the fact that I didn't know how to draw. I hadn't learned that basic. So this is not a wishing and a hoping. It's a definite directing of a law to create something specific in our life with the expectation that it knows how and is doing so now. And sooner or later, we will see the results in form of that, yes? Okay. And for some, old conditioning will even tell us that we shouldn't even be creating like this. How dare we? But the truth is, we're always creating in the law. You're always using the law, consciously or unconsciously. Things we like, things we don't, they're just becoming, and what we're doing is we're becoming more conscious of how we're using the law and what we're creating. Yes? It's like humanity has become more aware of the ecology of the planet. Yes? Well, some have, yes. I'll do collectively. So there's a slower learning part, of us, right? So we're learning how to do this. There's old conditioning that will tell us, how dare you want to have a life that is this good? What about all those others who don't? Which is like saying, I shouldn't learn how to ride a bicycle or read or write because not all kids know how or even have a bike or book. So I'm just not going to ride a bike because until everybody on the planet has a bicycle and knows how to ride it. Does that help anybody? No. Are holding back the flow of the divine, which wants to know itself more fully and is doing so through all of life, including us. That's what we're trying to hold back. I invite you to say yes. Yes to that full expression of life. Because to withhold our use of the infinite oneness due to some false sense of modesty or fake humility, or comparing the expression of life itself through us with the hubris to think that we know how it should be showing up for everybody else. See, I'm not in charge of your life. And you're not in charge of mine, yes? Whose life am I in charge of? My own. Whose life are you in charge of? My own. You don't know what God is doing through me, and I don't know what God is doing through you. I don't know the life experience that my soul has chosen to come, or your soul has chosen to come into this life to experience. Most of us don't even know the sole purpose of our own life, yes? Much less thinking that we know how other people should be living. So let go of the hubris of thinking we know what it is doing over there. Because that's a misuse of the life we have here. We are here to learn, to know, and embody as much of the divine as we can, including the humility to recognize that our source is not ourselves. Yes? Our source is greater than ourselves. It's not, hey, look what I'm doing. It's look what's being done through me. Look what I am opening to allow to have happen. That's true humility. We're only using a love and law of an infinite universe and embodying the divine qualities of love, wisdom, and a larger perception of wholeness. But we cannot teach what we haven't learned. So unless we are actually doing it, I can't share how to do that with you. Yes? See, I can't teach you how to ride a bike until I know how to ride a bike. Yes? And our holding back this flow of the divine doesn't serve the world, doesn't serve the infinite, doesn't serve us, doesn't serve anybody. Ernest closes this chapter with this quote, "Here and now we are surrounded by and immersed in an infinite good. How much of this infinite good is ours? All of it." He has that in capitals with an exclamation point. I think that means he wants us to pay attention. We can have all of this good. It's available to us. And then he goes on to say, and how much of it may we have to use? And that's where he says, as much of it as we can embody. Also, all in caps. As much of it as we can embody. So your work this week is to say, how can I embody more good? How can I open up my channels to good? And so I'm going to give you two practices. One, take time to connect and become aware of your unity with infinite intelligence. To first take some time to step back and become aware of that. To meditate, to contemplate, to do the first two steps of treatment. God is, and what is God? And I am already one of that. Yes? And then the second practice is choose an area of your life in which you would love to see greater good. Imagine it. Expand how much good that is. However much you think it is, expand more. Yes? And then embody it, feeling it as already so in your life. You don't have to figure out the how. Most people will not even go for their good because it's like, I don't know how that's going to happen. The how isn't ours. Ours is the what. What is the good that I want to have happen? Give it to that law and let it manifest, because trust me, it'll come up with ways you never thought of. Better ways. So feel it as already so in your life, and tell the law to make it happen, and then let go. Don't try to manipulate the law. Yes? Are you willing to take on those two practices this week? Yes. Are you willing to take on those two practices this week? Yes. Would you like a whole lot more good in your life? Yes. All right. We have an affirmation. Say it with me. I now expand my willingness to embody greater good in all forms than I have ever or believed possible. I live beyond my wildest dreams. Let's say it one more time. I now expand my willingness to embody greater good in all forms than I have ever or believed possible. I live beyond my wildest dreams. And so I'm going to take a moment to know that there is this infinite presence, this infinite love, this infinite wholeness, this infinite power and glory. Whatever name you want to give it, as Tim referenced, we give it all sorts of names. It's beyond all the names. It includes, but is beyond, and is more than any name we can ever give it. But this exists. We live, move, and have our being within it. It expresses itself through and as us, as well as all other forms of life. We get to play with it. I am one of that infinite good. Each of us is one of that infinite good. And so I speak my word that each of us this week experiences and expresses greater good than we ever have before. That we say yes to an embodiment that is beyond our wildest dreams. We take a deep breath, we let go of any smallness, any bloated nothingness, as Emerson says, that has been in the way of ourselves in the past, and say, yeah, bring it on. And then bring some more on too, by the way. It's non-fattening. It doesn't take any more effort. I know that each of us accepts the beautiful good, the life, health, vitality, aliveness, the love, the wisdom and intelligence, the power to create, the peace, the beauty, and the deep joy of the divine. In every area of our life, we say yes. And so in gratitude for knowing that this is already so, because we have spoken and agreed on this word in form and in fact, and we release it into a law that simply says yes. It is already so in the infinite mind. What we have said about is already so in the infinite mind, just waiting for us to catch up with it. And so we say, yes, it is so, and so it is. Thank you.